The fluorescent lights in the emergency room buzzed, like angry wasps, as 12-year-old Jamie Rivers sat in a plastic chair that felt colder than winter mornings. His small hands clutched a crumpled job application while nurses in blue scrubs hurried past like ocean waves, each carrying someone else's emergency. The antiseptic smell burned his nose, but not as much as the tears he refused to let fall. His father, Robert Rivers, lay behind those terrifying white doors where machines beeped like countdown timers. Just 3 hours ago, they had been walking into TechFlow Solutions together, Robert straightening his only good tie, while Jamie waited in the lobby with homework spread across his lap. His father had looked confident then, even though Jamie could see the worry lines around his eyes that had been growing deeper since Mom left 2 years ago. Now everything had changed in the span of a heartbeat, or rather, the absence of one. Jamie replayed the moment over and over in his mind. He had been solving math problems when he heard the commotion, adult voices rising in panic, someone shouting about calling an ambulance. Then he saw his father, being wheeled out on a stretcher, his face pale as fresh snow, oxygen mask covering the mouth that used to tell bedtime stories about brave knights and magical kingdoms. Heart attack, the paramedic had said gently. Severe blockage. We need to get him to Mount Sinai immediately. The ride in the ambulance felt like traveling through a nightmare. Jamie held his father's cold hand while machines monitored every breath, every heartbeat, every precious moment they might have left together. Robert's eyes had fluttered open once during the journey, finding his son's face with desperate love. "Take care of yourself, buddy," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "You're stronger than you know." Those words echoed in Jamie's mind as Dr. Hamilton, a kind woman with silver hair and gentle eyes, explained the situation in terms that sounded like a foreign language. Coronary artery disease. Emergency surgery. 70% blockage. Insurance complications. The number that mattered most was written on the estimate sheet in his lap. $238,000. Jamie stared at the figure until the numbers blurred together. His father made decent money as a software engineer, but they lived paycheck to paycheck. The insurance from his last job had expired when the startup went bankrupt 3 months ago. They had been applying everywhere, hoping someone would offer a position with benefits before disaster struck. Disaster had arrived first. Mrs. Valdez. Their elderly neighbor from apartment 4B sat beside him with worry carved into every line of her weathered face. She had been watching Jamie since his mother's departure, bringing homemade soup when he caught colds, and helping with homework when Robert worked late. Now she fumbled with her rosary beads, whispering prayers in Spanish that Jamie hoped might reach whatever divine forces controlled hospital miracles. "Mijo," she said softly, "your father is strong. He will fight through this." Jamie nodded because adults expected hope, but his mind was already calculating impossibilities. Even if his father survived the surgery, the recovery time would be months, no income, mounting medical bills. The eviction notice they had hidden from Mrs. Valdez would become reality within weeks, while Mrs. Valdez dozed fitfully in her chair. Jamie opened his father's laptop and began researching with the focused intensity that made his teachers call him gifted. Phoenix Technologies had been his father's dream job, but their application process took months. TechFlow Solutions was smaller, but their insurance coverage was basic at best. Then he found Meridian Technologies. The website gleamed with corporate success stories and employee testimonials that read like lottery winner interviews. Complete. Medical coverage from day one proclaimed their benefits page. Emergency family support protocols. Comprehensive cardiac care programs. Everything his father needed to survive. Meridian Technologies was legendary in the software industry. Their CEO, Diana Frost, had built the company from nothing into a technological empire worth billions. She was famous for demanding perfection, paying exceptional salaries, and making decisions with the speed of lightning strikes. The business magazines called her brilliant, ruthless, and utterly focused on results. Jamie scrolled through his father's resume, memorizing every detail. Bachelor's degree in computer science from State University, 7 years of experience in full-stack development, expertise in React, Node.js, Python, and cloud architecture, 3 successful app launches that had saved companies millions of dollars. Glowing recommendations from clients praised his innovation and reliability. His father wasn't just qualified for Meridian Technologies. He was perfect for them. But Robert Rivers lay unconscious in intensive care, while Diana Frost's company held the key to his survival just 23 miles across the city. Jamie closed the laptop and made a decision that would have terrified any reasonable adult. He was going to get his father that job. Not through normal applications or hiring processes that took weeks they didn't have. He was going to walk into Meridian Technologies and convince Diana Frost herself to hire Robert Rivers immediately. The plan formed in his mind with crystal clarity. Tomorrow morning, during visiting hours when Mrs. Valdez would naturally assume he was getting breakfast from the cafeteria, he would take the bus downtown to Meridian Technologies. He had studied the building layout online, 42 floors, of glass and steel reaching toward the sky like a corporate mountain. Executive offices occupied the top 5 floors, with Diana Frost's suite commanding the 42nd. Floor like a fortress in the clouds, Jamie pulled out his father's wallet. Counting the emergency cash Robert kept for hospital vending machines, $37, enough for bus fare and maybe a taxi if things went wrong. He photographed his father's identification cards and resume, storing digital copies on the phone Mrs. Valdez had given him for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency in the family bathroom. Jamie studied his reflection with the analytical eye of someone planning a performance. At 12, he was tall for his age, with the serious expression that adults often mistook for maturity. His father's gray suit jacket hung loose on his thin frame, despite Mrs. Valdez's expert alterations with safety pins and determination. The effect wasn't perfect, but it might pass casual inspection in the fast-paced world of corporate meetings. He practiced walking with confident steps, shoulders straight, making eye contact like his father had taught him during mock job interviews. They used to conduct for fun. Confidence opens more doors than credentials, Robert always said. People respond to certainty, even when you're uncertain inside. Jamie returned to the ICU waiting area where Mrs. Valdez had awakened and was unpacking another care package of sandwiches and fruit juice. She studied his face with the intuition that came from raising 6 children of her own. "You have that look, mijo?" she said carefully. "The same look your father gets when he's planning something impossible. Just thinking about tomorrow," Jamie replied, which was technically true. Mrs. Valdez nodded, but her dark eyes held suspicion mixed with admiration. She had seen this family survive divorce, job loss, and medical scares through sheer determination. If Robert Rivers had taught his son anything, it was that love could move mountains when ordinary strength failed. As visiting hours ended and they prepared for another night of hospital vigil, Jamie made one final check of his preparations. Resume printed on crisp white paper, business cards his father had designed but never used. The speech he had rehearsed about Meridian Technologies needing innovative software solutions and Robert Rivers being the perfect candidate to deliver them. Tomorrow, he would walk into Diana Frost's corporate kingdom, carrying nothing but desperate love and impossible hope. The 12-year-old boy who still believed in bedtime, story magic was about to challenge a business empire built on cold efficiency and ruthless results. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, his rational mind whispered. But love had taught Jamie that sometimes the most impossible plans were the only ones worth attempting. His father's life depended on a miracle, and Jamie Rivers was prepared to create one himself. The morning sun painted Meridian Technologies in shades of gold and ambition as Jamie Rivers stepped off the downtown bus at exactly 9:15 a.m. The 42-story building stretched toward the clouds like a modern Tower of Babel, its glass facade reflecting the hurried movements of business. Professionals who moved with the precision of expensive clockwork. Jamie's heart hammered against his ribs as he adjusted his father's oversized suit jacket one final time. The safety pins Mrs. Valdez had used to alter the shoulders pressed against his skin like tiny reminders of how far he was from belonging in this world of corporate power. But belonging had never been the goal. Survival was. The lobby overwhelmed his senses with polished marble floors that clicked under Italian leather shoes, abstract sculptures that probably cost more than his father's annual salary, and the low hum of conversations conducted in the universal language of money and influence. Jamie approached the reception desk where a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile as sharp as winter wind looked down at him with barely concealed annoyance. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting that helping 12-year-old boys was not part of her job description. "I have a meeting with Ms. Diana Frost," Jamie said, his voice carrying the confident authority he had practiced in hospital bathroom mirrors. "Robert Rivers, software engineering consultant." The receptionist's manicured fingers flew across her computer keyboard with mechanical efficiency. "I don't see any appointment scheduled for a Robert Rivers." Jamie's prepared response rolled off, his tongue like silk. "Emergency consultation." Ms. Frost requested immediate availability for the Parker Industries project timeline acceleration. He had researched Meridian Technologies' current contracts online, gambling that Parker Industries was important enough to warrant executive attention. Something flickered in the receptionist's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or fear of making a mistake that might cost her position in this unforgiving corporate ecosystem. "One moment, please." She lifted a phone with the reverence usually reserved for sacred objects. "Miss Sterling? Hey, have a Robert Rivers here claiming Ms. Frost requested an emergency consultation regarding Parker Industries." Jamie held his breath while his fate balanced on the edge of corporate bureaucracy. Through the phone speaker, he heard a woman's voice respond with crisp efficiency. "Send him up. Ms. Frost has 10 minutes before her board meeting." The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like ascending through layers of atmosphere, toward some unreachable corporate heaven. Jamie studied his reflection in the polished steel doors, reminding himself that confidence mattered more than age. Love could overcome any obstacle, that his father's life depended on the next 10 minutes. The executive floor hummed with the quiet intensity of a submarine. Assistants moved like ghosts between offices, their footsteps muffled by carpet that probably cost more per square foot than most people earned in a month. Jamie followed signs toward the corner office where Diana Frost commanded her empire. Victoria Sterling, Diana's personal assistant, met him outside the frosted glass doors. She was younger than Jamie had expected, perhaps 35, with intelligent brown eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of his appearance without judgment. "Mr. Rivers," she said, extending a hand with genuine warmth. "Miss Frost can see you now, but please understand, she has a very tight schedule today." Jamie shook her hand with the firm grip his father had taught him, noting how Victoria's expression shifted slightly. Something in his manner, his direct eye contact, or perhaps the desperate maturity that tragedy had forced upon him, seemed to intrigue her. The office beyond those doors belonged to a different universe. Floor 2 ceiling. Windows offered a panoramic view of the city sprawling toward distant mountains. Modern art pieces that belonged in museums hung on walls painted in shades of silver and steel. A conference table dominated one side of the room, surrounded by chairs that looked like they had been designed by aerospace engineers for maximum efficiency and minimum comfort. Behind a desk that could have served as a landing strip for small aircraft sat Diana Frost. Jamie's research had shown him countless photographs of Meridian Technologies' legendary CEO, but none had prepared him for the physical presence she commanded. At 38, Diana Frost possessed the kind of beauty that seemed carved from ice and determination. Her dark hair was pulled back in a style that spoke of military precision, framing a face where every angle suggested intelligence honed to a razor's edge. Her gray eyes held the kind of focus that could dissect corporate strategies or personal weaknesses with equal efficiency. She wore a black suit that fit like expensive armor, and when she looked up from the documents scattered across her desk, Jamie felt the full weight of her attention, like standing under a spotlight designed to reveal every secret. "Mr. Rivers," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "Victoria mentioned something about Parker Industries and timeline acceleration. I assume you have solutions to present." Jamie's carefully rehearsed speech evaporated under that steel-gray gaze. For a moment that stretched like eternity, he stood frozen in the face of corporate power that could crush dreams with casual indifference. Then he remembered his father lying unconscious in intensive care, machines monitoring every heartbeat, and found strength he didn't know he possessed. "Ms. Frost," he began, his young voice steady, despite the magnitude of what he was attempting. "I'm here because my father needs your help." Diana's expression shifted from professional attention to sharp confusion. "Excuse me? My name is Jamie Rivers. My father is Robert Rivers. And he's dying in Mount Sinai Hospital because we can't afford the surgery that would save his life." The words tumbled out with desperate honesty. "The most talented software engineer you'll ever meet, and Meridian Technologies needs him as much as he needs you." For perhaps the first time in her corporate career, Diana Frost found herself speechless. She stared at this 12-year-old boy who had somehow infiltrated her fortress of efficiency and was now standing before her desk with tears threatening to spill from eyes that held far too much pain for someone so young. "You're 12 years old," she said finally. 12 and 3 months, Jamie corrected with the precision that made adults underestimate him. "And my father has 7 years of experience in full-stack development, expertise in React and Node.js, and 3 successful app launches that saved his previous clients over $4 million in operational costs." Diana leaned back in her chair, studying this impossible child who spoke like a seasoned recruiter while wearing a suit obviously altered for someone half his size. "How? Did you get past building security?" "I told them I had an emergency consultation appointment," which is technically true because this is definitely an emergency. "And I'm definitely hoping to consult with you about hiring the best software engineer currently available in this city." Despite herself, Diana felt the corners of her mouth twitch upward. It had been years since anyone had surprised her, longer still since someone had made her want to smile. "And you thought walking into my office and announcing that your father is dying would convince me to hire him? Thought walking into your office and proving that Robert Rivers raised a son brave enough to fight for his father's life might demonstrate the kind of character and determination that builds successful companies?" The silence that followed felt heavy with possibility. Anna studied Jamie's face, noting the intelligence that blazed behind his tears, the stubborn set of his jaw that spoke of inherited determination, the way he stood straight despite wearing clothes that didn't fit and carrying a burden no child should bear. "Tell me about your father," she said quietly. Jamie's face lit up like sunrise, breaking through storm clouds. For the next 8 minutes, he painted a picture of Robert Rivers that went far beyond technical credentials. He spoke of late nights when his father debugged code while helping with homework, of programming languages taught through bedtime stories, of a man who had held their small family together through divorce, job loss, and medical scares with nothing but love and stubborn refusal to give up. Diana found herself listening with an attention she usually reserved for merger negotiations or quarterly reports. This child's love for his father was so pure, so absolute, that it created cracks in walls she had spent years building around her heart.
Miss Frost,"
Jamie concluded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know you're busy and important, and probably think I'm crazy for coming here. But my dad taught me that sometimes the impossible is just another word for something nobody's tried hard enough to achieve. Will you please give him a chance?" Diana Frost stared at this extraordinary child who had somehow found his way past every barrier she had constructed between herself and the messy complications of human emotion. In his eyes, she saw something she had forgotten existed, the kind of love that moved mountains, changed destinies, and made ordinary people capable of extraordinary things. For the first time in 3 years, round her heart began to crack. The silence in Diana Frost's office stretched like a bridge between two worlds. On one side stood a 12-year-old boy who had gambled everything on love and courage. On the other sat a woman who had forgotten that corporate empires were built by human hearts. It's not just human ambition. Diana rose from her chair with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to commanding rooms, but her movement held something different now. The steel-gray armor in her eyes had developed fractures, and through those cracks, Jamie glimpsed something unexpected, recognition of her own reflection in his desperate determination. "Victoria," Diana said, pressing the intercom button with Steady fingers that betrayed none of the earthquake happening inside her chest. Cancel my next 3 meetings. And call Dr. Hamilton at Mount Sinai Hospital. Tell him that Meridian Technologies is assuming full financial responsibility for Robert Rivers' medical care, effective immediately. Jamie's legs nearly buckled under the weight of relief so profound it felt like drowning in reverse. You mean it? Mean it. Dana walked around her desk, kneeling down so she could look directly into his eyes. But I also mean this. Your father is getting this job because of who he is, not just because of what you've done. The research I've conducted in the last 10 minutes while you were talking tells me that Robert Rivers is exactly the kind of innovative thinker Meridian Technologies needs. She had indeed been researching, her fingers flying across her computer keyboard while Jamie painted pictures of late-night coding sessions and bedtime programming stories. Robert Rivers' portfolio was impressive enough to warrant serious consideration under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. And Diana Frost was discovering that sometimes the most important business decisions had nothing to do with spreadsheets or profit margins. Can we go see him now? Jamie asked, his voice small with hope. That still seemed too fragile to trust completely. Diana glanced at her schedule, mentally calculating the cost of abandoned meetings and rearranged priorities. 3 months ago, she would have delegated this situation to human resources and returned to the ruthless efficiency that had built her empire. Today, something had shifted inside her chest, where ice had been melting since a brave child walked through her doors carrying nothing but love for his father. Victoria, she called, prepare my car. We're going to Mount Sinai Hospital. The ride through downtown traffic felt like traveling through a different reality. Diana sat in the back of her executive sedan beside Jamie, watching the city blur past while this extraordinary child filled the silence with stories about his father that painted pictures of a man who had raised his son to believe in magic disguised as determination. Dad used to say that programming languages were just another way of teaching computers to dream, Jamie explained, his hands moving expressively as he talked. He'd show me how lines of code could create entire worlds, solve impossible problems, or help people connect across continents. He made everything seem possible, even when Mom left and we had to move to the smaller apartment and eat ramen noodles. For dinner 3 nights a week, Diana found herself genuinely listening, not just waiting for conversational pauses to insert appropriate responses. When had she stopped hearing stories like this? When had human connection become something to schedule rather than something to cherish? At Mount Sinai Hospital, Mrs. Valdez was pacing the ICU waiting area like a guardian angel who had forgotten how to sit still. Her weathered face registered shock, confusion, and then profound relief as Jamie appeared with a woman in an expensive suit who moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to making impossible things happen. "Mijo," Mrs. Valdez whispered, pulling Jamie into a hug that smelled like lavender and worry. "Where have you been? I was so frightened." "I got Dad." "A job," Jamie said simply. "Mrs. Valdez, this is Diana Frost. She's going to help us." Diana extended her hand to the elderly woman, noting the calluses that spoke of a lifetime spent caring for others. The intelligent dark eyes that had clearly recognized something special in this remarkable child, the way Mrs. Valdez studied her face as if reading a map of intentions. "Mrs. Valdez," Diana said quietly, "Jamie tells me you've been taking care of them both. I want you to know that Robert Rivers is now a Meridian Technologies employee with full medical benefits and emergency family support services. All of his medical expenses will be covered completely." Mrs. Valdez's knees gave out slightly, and Diana caught her arm with gentle strength. "Dios mío," the older woman whispered. "How is this possible?" "Your boy made it possible," Diana replied, looking at Jamie with something approaching awe. "He reminded me that sometimes business decisions should be about more than business." Dr. Hamilton emerged from the ICU with the expression medical professionals wore when delivering news that balanced on the knife's edge between hope and heartbreak. But as Diana introduced herself and explained Meridian Technologies' complete financial coverage, the doctor's relief was visible. "With full insurance coverage, we can proceed with the surgery immediately," Dr. Hamilton explained. "Mr. Rivers, Condition is serious but treatable. The procedure will take approximately 4 hours, followed by several days of intensive care, and then a recovery period of 6 to 8 weeks. Will he be okay? Jamie asked, his voice small with the vulnerability that had been hiding behind. His extraordinary courage. Dr. Hamilton smiled with genuine warmth. Your father is going to be fine. He's strong. He's receiving the best possible care, and now he has something very powerful to fight for. As Robert Rivers was wheeled into surgery, Diana found herself doing something she hadn't done in years, sitting in a hospital waiting room, drinking terrible coffee from vending machines, and discovering that some of life's most important moments happen in places that had nothing to do with corporate boardrooms or quarterly profits. Mrs. Valdez shared stories of watching Jamie grow up, of the nights she'd heard him helping his father debug code through their thin apartment walls, of the morning she'd found him teaching himself Python programming because he wanted to surprise Robert with a simple game he'd created. That boy has never been just a child, Mrs. Valdez said, watching Jamie pace the waiting area with nervous energy. It was an old soul and a heart bigger than the sky. His father raised him to believe that love could solve any problem if you were creative enough and brave enough to try. Diana nodded, understanding now why Jamie's desperate plan had succeeded. He hadn't just walked into her office asking for charity. He had demonstrated the kind of innovative thinking, unshakable determination, and creative problem-solving that built successful companies. Those qualities, inherited from a father who had clearly raised his son to believe in the power of love disguised as courage, are exactly what Meridian Technologies needed. 4 hours later, Dr. Hamilton emerged with news that transformed the waiting room into a celebration of second chances. The surgery had been completely successful. Robert Rivers would make a full recovery. The blockages had been cleared, and his heart was already showing signs of improved function. Can we see him? Jamie asked, his voice thick with tears. He no longer tried to hide. He's in recovery now, but yes, you can see him briefly. Robert Rivers looked pale against the white hospital sheets, but his breathing was steady and strong. As Jamie took his father's hand, Robert's eyes fluttered open. With the slow focus of someone returning from a long journey, "Hey, buddy," Robert whispered, his voice rough but filled with infinite love. "What did I miss?" "I got you a job, Dad," Jamie said simply. "It's the best job in the city, with the best health insurance, and a boss who actually cares about people." Robert's confused gaze shifted to Diana, who stood beside the bed with an expression that had transformed completely from the ice-cold corporate leader of that morning. "Miss Frost, I presume? I'm afraid I'm at a disadvantage here." "The disadvantage is entirely mine, Mr. Rivers," Diana replied softly. "Your son just taught me more about leadership, courage, and innovative problem-solving than I've learned in 3 years of running Meridian Technologies. And you're feeling better? I'd very much like to discuss how we can put your talents to work, changing the way our industry approaches both technology and human connection." 3 months later, Robert Rivers had not only made a complete recovery, but had revolutionized Meridian Technologies' approach to employee wellness and family support services. His first major project, a comprehensive platform connecting employees with emergency family resources, had become the industry standard for corporate responsibility. Diana Frost discovered that the cracks Jamie had created in her icy exterior had let in more than just one family's love. She had rediscovered her own capacity for joy, for connection, for the kind of leadership that inspired rather than intimidated. The company's productivity had actually increased as employee satisfaction soared under policies that recognized workers as whole human beings rather than efficient corporate components. Jamie Rivers returned to being a 12-year-old boy, but one who carried the quiet confidence of someone who had learned that love, combined with courage and creativity, could indeed move mountains. He spent his afternoons at Meridian Technologies' new family-friendly workspace, where Robert had designed areas for employees, children, to safely spend time while their parents worked, sometimes when Diana watched Jamie helping other kids with their homework, while Robert coded innovative solutions to impossible problems. She remembered that the most important transformations in business, like in life, often began with someone brave enough to believe that the impossible was just another word for something nobody had tried hard enough to achieve. The Ice Queen had discovered her heart, The desperate father had found his miracle. And the brave child had proven that sometimes the smallest people could create the biggest changes. In the gleaming towers of corporate America, love had won again.